Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and today I'm going to be talking about the 5 best Drongons in the Pokemon TCG standard format specifically. And this video is in contrast to my previous video I made with the 5 worst engines. But these videos are actually pretty different because the worst engines are more so kind of silly cards, and the cards with attacks that are useful and the ability to sometimes synergize with those, and it's just kind of weird. And they all have like other utility, though they are not strong cards either. So ultimately, they're not cards that you should really be playing that often. But these are the 5 engines that really are played in the game right now. There honestly aren't that many engines that are actually played, and I've talked about this a bunch, but the engines in the game are actually relatively weak. So essentially, or not super weak, but we'll break it down. But I'm ranking all the 5 most played engines and also talking about some other cards. And this is actually a very practical video that's useful when building a deck. I'm going to quickly talk about some different decks and what engines they play, though. Empire's Grimshell doesn't play any engine. Gardevoir, doesn't really play an engine either. Though it could. I mean, any deck could. The Dragapult decks play the Drakloak engine, which is we'll talk about that. It's pretty nice. But then you have some decks playing the Joltik engine, and you have, or not the Joltik engine, the Noctowl engine. I was looking at Joltik, which doesn't play that. So I don't know why I said that. And then there's some decks that play Ensoric EX, so that's not as consistent outside of that deck itself. And then there's Pidgeot EX played some, and Dudunsparce. There are also things like Teal'c EX and Gholdengo EX, which I'm not counting here. They are okay, certainly. Obviously, Teal'c EX accelerates energy, which is its main use case, but that's not really the same type of card, and they're just not drawing you as many cards. So they're in terms of drawing you cards as a draw engine, they're just worse. Then we also have 2 other cards we need to talk about before we hop into the actual engine discussion. These are part of it. But they are not really on this list. We have Squawkabilly EX and Pheasantipede EX. These 2 cards are really good. They're probably better than any of the other cards we'll talk about. Not sure, but actually, I'm pretty sure they are. But they're not your whole engine. And if you're just playing these, I wouldn't say you're playing a draw engine. There's also Mew EX, and there might be some others that I'm forgetting. But these are pretty good. Squawkabilly EX will be drawing you 6 cards in the first turn of the game, and it's pretty good. But that's it. That's all it's doing, but that is good. And then Pheasantipede EX is drawing you 3 cards on a handful of turns throughout the course of the game, so probably drawing like 6 to 9 cards. Could be drawing 12, could be drawing more throughout the course of the game. And that can be really good. And they're both, Squawkabilly is a little more vulnerable than Pheasantipede, but they're both a little bit vulnerable on the bench. Engines in general can be vulnerable on the bench. We'll talk about that with the different ones. They're fine, but they're not usable every turn, and so that takes away from them and means that they don't compare to the other engines quite as well. They're just a little bit different, and again, not super reliable. Pheasantipede is pretty reliable, but you can only use one of its ability per turn. And it's really good, but I feel like comparing it to the other cards is kind of silly here. But the first engine we have here that is like a true engine is the Dudunsparce engine. This engine, if you know me and you know my thoughts on that, I think it is bad. Yeah. The reason I think this is bad, well, let's talk about what it does first. And I don't think it's terrible, though, but I definitely think it is the weakest of the 5 main engines played right now. Also, if I missed any, comment that down below, because that'd be kind of awkward. There are certainly support cards like Cynthia's Goodbye or Ethan's Quilava, or wait, set the stage 1, or there's like trains and stuff too. But the Dudunsparce draws you 3 cards with its ability. It says once during your turn. I actually didn't even know it said that. That doesn't matter because if you drew any cards this way, you shuffle this Pokemon and all cards attached to it into your deck. Drawing 3 cards is pretty good. This is more cards than you'll get with any of the other cards, which is really good. Nice, right? Drawing 3 cards is good in this case. Drawing 3 cards on the supporter is bad, but drawing 3 cards here is pretty nice. However, it shuffles itself back into your deck. This is better than just discarding it because you could redraw and play it again, I imagine. But it's also not. I mean, you'd obviously rather it stay in play. I will mention that it has an okay attack. Most of these Pokemon have. I mean, none of them are super spectacular as attacking Pokemon. They're okay. We'll talk about some of them. But also, this will not get stuck in the active because you can use your ability to get out of the active. Also, you can stop yourself from decking out using this ability, though that doesn't really ever come into play. I've never had that actually matter. Actually, comment that down below if you have had it matter or if you've never had it matter. Because I imagine most people will have not had it matter, but it's kind of cool for that. And again, it can get out of the active. This can lead to it being used as a pivot. The previous evolution that is played is also a pivot here. Oh, that's a different engine. There's also one that's not a pivot, that people play different ones. There's different reasons to play different ones. There's one that has 60 HP, which can be used as a pivot, which is definitely a card that is played some. Those played less within like a Dragon Ball heavy meta. But then there's one with like a Subtle Protect and 7 HP as well, so you got some different options there. But it's a card that is a pivot on a stage 1, though it does leave play, so it's not going to be a consistent pivot. But anyways, it's pretty cool for that. But ultimately, the biggest thing, of course, is the fact that you draw 3 cards and shuffle it back in. Shuffling it back in means that it's now something you're going to draw again, which is cool, and it's going to be 2 cards. It could be more, but we'll say it's 2. And then you're drawing those 2 cards, and you kind of want those 2 cards to play them again, but also then that means you're not drawing other cards that you're looking for. So this means that it's, drawing you 3 cards, but putting 2 back into your deck, which, I mean, they're good because they're part of your engine, but they're not cards that are actually what you want, right? So in some ways, you're kind of clogging up your deck. You're kind of not, right? They're kind of just replacing themselves, but they're mostly replacing themselves, getting you some extra cards along the way. But this isn't something you're using every turn either. So Dudunsparce isn't super reliable. One thing that it is really nice for is you can leave it on your bench, and then you get a ton of draw. As I said, 3's more than the other draw cards. So it's on the turn when you use it, it's arguably the most powerful of these draw engines, but you're just not using it every turn, and it does require resources to set up, either the cards you naturally draw into, or some item or search or something else like that, like Artizone or something, and so you are fueling the engine, which definitely isn't ideal. Oh, there was Iono's Kilowattrel, that's another engine, and Revroom as well. You are fueling those engines, and they are not great. Revroom's okay, Iono's Kilowattrel is pretty bad. I mean, they're not horrendous, but the Dudunsparce, again, it has that issue of needing to fuel it. But if you are looking for a big turn, for example, within Gholdengo EX, this is pretty commonly played. Gholdengo EX, of course, if you're not familiar, is aiming to take 1-shots with its attack, and also it has its ability to support you with draw throughout the course of the game. So you have some more stable draw, though it's not amazing. Gholdengo EX, as I said, is like, it's not a good draw engine, but it adds a little bit of extra card draw, so it's not like horrible or anything. But then you have, of course, that Dudunsparce for that big turn to take a big knockout, or you can be doing, if you have the resources you need already, you don't have to use the Dudunsparce and can wait on that, which is pretty nice, but it's not consistent card draw throughout the course of the game as well, which means that you're not going to be accumulating resources in your hand to the same extent as some of these other engines. And setting up these big turns. Of course, then if you are setting up big turns, which we'll talk about, or like big hands, by drawing lots of cards throughout multiple turns, your opponent could, of course, Iono you or something like that, and then you lose all those cards. So, yeah, the Dudunsparce has legitimate use cases, and it's all right. I don't think it's good as like a general draw engine, but is a card that can be used for big burst turns, and can be something, again, that you can save as a resource, which is pretty interesting. It definitely behaves pretty differently than the other engines, but it is pretty cool. Then the next engine I have here, which is the number 4 engine. Again, the distinction between these engines, I have them ranked in order here. However, they are different, right? So ultimately, it obviously depends on what deck you're playing, but Pidgeot EX has its ability Quick Search, allowing you to search your deck for any card and put it into your hand once every turn. You can't use more than one Quick Search, but whatever. That's still really good, searching for any card. I'll also mention actually Thwackey as an engine, which is pretty similar to this, which is pretty cool, though it's kind of weird. Maybe at some point I'll talk about the there was at NAAC, there was a pretty fun Hydrapple Festival League deck. It wasn't, I don't think it's super strong, but it's kind of fun. I've seen some videos on it. But regardless, this searches 1 card every turn. So it's really consistent and safe and stable. But it's not doing anything crazy either, right? It's an engine that's only getting you 1 card every turn. That's the least of all these engines, I guess. We'll talk about Drakloak, which gets 1 card, but you can use multiple Draklooks, and it's a stage 1, and you see 2 cards. So it's pretty different there. But Pidgeot EX, getting 1 card, any card from your deck is really good. We'll also talk about Noctowl, which searches out specific cards, and Pidgeot EX can do that without you needing to play the Noctowl. Noctowl is another engine which you kind of need to feed into it as well, which is a downside. But Pidgeot EX is, again, searching for any card every turn. It requires resources to set up more than other ones because it is a stage 2, though. So ultimately, Pidgeot EX isn't great in decks that aren't playing stage 2s. We see it, for example, here. with Flareon or with Noctowl here within Flareon, and also with like Goldengo, and these are decks that you're adding Rare Candy into that deck because you're presumably not playing it normally, but you can do that. This list has a 1/0/1 Pidgeot EX line with a Rare Candy splashed in, so it is extra deck space and like things going on. If they're prized, it's bad. So you have more awkwardness with it. A deck like Charizard EX, though, Pidgeot EX works really well because you're naturally playing a lot of rare candies, and you're also going to be playing ways to get stage shoes into play, and things like that, right? You want to get Charizard EX into play. We see Dustuor in this list, so you can hopefully get that Pidgeot EX into play. And then from there, also looking for more specific combo pieces, and Pidgeot EX can help you do that. Of course, these engines, Pidgeot EX and Zoroark EX and Drakloak, are good for longer games. We can use their ability every turn. Noctowl, you don't want super long games because you're going to end up running out of Noctowls to use, presumably. And then Dudunsparce is a little different, as I said. So this is the general choice for control, though. The Enzo EX and Drakloak draw engines are also fine for it, I think. I haven't really played Control much, honestly, post-rotation. I played it some. I don't know if I've actually played it at all in Dust and Rivals War or really played against it, because, like, who's playing Pidgeot Control? But this is still useful for that situation and useful for unique tech cards, specifically tech cards that can't be searched with Noctowl. It allows you to use those if you're looking for specific special energies. Of course, you can find those other ways, but Pidgeot is really nice for that. I will also mention with Dudunsparce, Pidgeot EX, and Noctowl, the three engines which are colorless, which ultimately is really meaningful because there is the Stadium Team Rocket's Watchtower. Team Rocket's Watchtower is really bad for these because it just shuts them down. That's like horrible. However, in practicality, I don't really see it played that much. I mean, it's not like it's not played at all, but I think it's really underplayed, so you don't need to worry about it that much. You could increase your stadium counts or something like that. But as I said, I don't think it's a huge issue. But Pidgeot EX is hurt by that quite a bit. But it is an engine that also has some other things going on. A Blustery Wind is also an okay attack. Not amazing. It actually gets rid of a stadium, which is kind of cool. And then also you have Free Retreat, which is cool as a pivot. I will say, your HP for a Stage 2 EX is low. It's like noticeably lower than almost all the other Stage 2 EXs in the game. But also comparing it to most Pokemon, it's still pretty high. So while it is kind of a liability in that regard, it's not actually really a liability. We'll talk about Zoroark EX as well. You have the same 280 HP, and it's like kind of high for a Stage 1 EX. But again, it's the same HP as Pidgeot EX, so like how much does that actually matter? I don't know. I will also mention that the Pidgeys in the game only have 60 HP, which isn't great. There's one with 50 as well. But ultimately, that's not great, right? Because of a Dragon Ball EX, I mentioned it with the Dudunsparce, where there's 60 and 70 HP previous evolutions. But regardless, Pidgeot is still a really solid draw engine, in my opinion. Kind of underrated, I guess. I'm not sure if I think it's super underrated, just a little bit underrated right now. But definitely a pretty cool draw engine that, is fun. It's been good for a while, or I think it's fun. I don't know if people would say it's fun or just like good or just kind of whatever. But again, it can get anything, which is really useful, specifically with more teched out decks. Then the third engine I have here is Zoroark EX. Zoroark EX is an engine I've actually really my thoughts have changed on it actually a lot over time. At first, I thought it was like kind of good, then I thought it was like kind of bad, and now I think it's kind of good again. It's a draw engine where with the ability trade, where you discard a hand to draw two cards, or no, a card from your hand to draw two cards, and then you also have an attack Night Joker, which is actually the best attack on this list, which says choose a when your bench ends Pokemon's attacks and use it as this attack. I mean, Zoroark EX is a deck in the game. It's definitely, in my opinion, not a super strong deck. I don't think it's terrible, but I've talked about it. Starmanitan is not very good in the metagame right now with Shaman floating around. That's kind of unfortunate. Veshram is a pretty mediocre attacking Pokemon to be copying as well, but it does have use cases. You can do certain things that are pretty strong in some of the top decks in the game, which is kind of nice. If they're not one-shotting you, Veshram is pretty good. And if they... And you can also like hit Gardevoir EX for weakness, which is kind of fun. But also, I mean, you're not like super tanky. Regardless, this is not a video about this as an attacking Pokemon. This is about it just as a draw engine. And yeah, it's just pretty good as a draw engine. It does have 2 retreat, which is... Oh, I was to say the highest. Dudunsparce has 3, but like its ability gets out of play. So Zoroark EX can get stuck in the active. I will mention, which is a really, really big deal. We have the new, or I think it's a big deal for Zoroark EX. We have the new tool Air Balloon coming out in the next set. or sets. I don't know. It's a Black Bolt or White Flare. I actually don't remember which one it's in, but that will give you free retreat as a tool. It's just like a better rescue board, essentially. And then also you have Ends Castle as a stadium, which can be good with the Enzoric EX. I mean, it is good, but it is your stadium. It's kind of hard to find, so it's ultimately not something you love to have to do. It is played in Enzoric EX decks and decks that are playing Enzoric EX as just an engine, and it's not amazing. It makes it a little more clunky, takes up deck space, things like that. But your ability is pretty solid. Discard 1, draw 2. Drawing 2 is pretty nice. Obviously, it's not as much as drawing 3, which you see on Dudunsparce, but it is 2, and 2 cards. It is pretty solid. Discarding 1 usually isn't that bad, but it can be an issue at times, certainly. It can be an advantage, like a thing you want to do as well, to thin your deck, or of course get stuff in the discard for powering up something, I guess. I feel like that's not super common, but I mean, it can be good, like with Gardevoir EX, or various things. I mean, getting cards in the discard can be nice, certainly. But ultimately, it's a solid ability. I will also mention Drakloak here as well. I'll talk about them together. Mostly, Drakloak, of course, is the previous evolution. It's a middle evolution, which evolves into Dragapult EX. Dragapult EX is obviously very good. Drakloak sees a lot of play. I mostly sees play with Dragapult EX, but it's kind of like a two-sided coin where, or that can't be the right saying, but it's a card that is something that is... it elevates Dragapult EX, so that's like cool. But then people are like, well, it's only good with Dragapult EX. But then, if you're playing Drakloak on its own, it's pretty good. But then why not just add Dragapult EX, because that's really good as well. And then all of a sudden you're playing Dragapult, right? So Drakloak is not really played in other decks, but you can look at Goldengo with Dragapult, where you have Goldengo EX, and you have Drakloak, and then just like one Dragapult or something like that. And you're not really focused on the Dragapult EX, and Drakloak is like a solid supporting draw engine in a deck that already has a bit of a draw engine as well. So Drakloak, you look at the top 2 and put one of them into your hand, the other on the bottom of your deck. And this is actually really interesting because Drakloak looks at the top 2 and gets 1. So it increases your hand size by 1 and looks at 2. And Enzoric EX looks at the top 2, and you get them both into your hand. You just cut a card from your hand. So you're also increasing your hand size by 1 and looking at the top 2. And Drakloak puts the other card on the bottom of your deck. So if you use a bunch of Drakelokes versus using a bunch of Enzoric EXs, you also have the same number of cards at the end of your turn, or at the end of that sequence. And then you also have... you've seen the same number of cards. So they're actually pretty similar in that regard. Of course, though... Enzoric EX will end up like kind of churning through your deck faster, which is often good, but it's not always good. The downside of Enzoric EX is that it's a 2-prizer, and I also mentioned the higher retreat cost. And these are both pretty, in my opinion, substantial downsides. They're not like the end of the world. It's not a horrible card by any means. I mean, I think it's pretty good. But they are downsides there. Drakloak having 90 HP obviously is low. I think it's the lowest on this list. And, that's not amazing, but it's not like it's some huge liability on the bench either, in my opinion. And it's not really getting stuck that much. And you can, you're probably playing Dragapult EX with this. So if it gets damaged for like 30 or 60 or something, you can probably revolve it. And then you have a lot more HP. And then you also have immunity to bench damage. So then you're kind of in a similar situation to Enzoric EX, or you could not be in that situation by not evolving. So, of course, evolving, then you don't have the ability anymore, but now you have an attacking Pokemon. It's a big thing, right? Dragapult, talked about all the time, played all the time, but yeah, you have that option, which I am counting into this some. But these engines are pretty similar. If you put them in the other order, I would not really blame you. I mean, honestly, I don't think the ordering is anything super crazy. I've kind of swapped it around right before making this. I do think Dudunsparce is definitely the weakest of these 4. Well, I guess I should mention that getting Badoo locked is bad for Pidgeot EX because you can't rare kitty into it. But you can also TM evolution. And also... I don't know. It's meaningful, but that's partially why it's lower there. But Drakloak is a card that is going to be drawing you cards. It's pretty solid, pretty consistent, and then not losing you resources from your hand, which is nice. Ultimately, you want to avoid shuffling your deck with it so you don't see the same cards again. But you can shuffle. You can kind of control that some, which is pretty cool. It's a little weird and honestly something that I don't think people think about too much. I don't think about that much when playing with it. I think about it some. But yeah, it's a really solid card. I could talk more about it. Like Enzoric EX has weakness, Drakloak doesn't have weakness, so this is definitely a liability against certain decks. It can be kind of bad. But yeah, Drakloak is pretty solid. I feel like it's the safest engine in the game, despite being associated with another deck, which is really interesting. The last engine we have here, though, is Noctowl. The Noctowl engine is an engine, of course, which is another Stage 1, and Stage 1 it's a Stage 1 that it has an on-play ability. This is kind of weird because it's the only one with an on-play ability. Dudunsparce actually has like the reverse, a leaving play ability, so it's kind of similar there, but it is more versatile within that guard. However, it searches for 2 trainers when you evolve this if you have a Terra Pokemon in play. Getting a Terra Pokemon in play is not that big of an issue. Almost every deck that plays this naturally plays Terra Pokemon, but you could put it in a deck and just slot in some Terra Pokemon to get value out of it as well if you wanted to. And Terra Pokemon in play give you some different opportunities as well. They're not like absolutely insane, but they are pretty nice. But getting any 2 trainers from your deck into your hand is like super strong. Pidgeot EX gets any 1 card, but it's only once per turn. Noctowl gets any trainer, which isn't quite as good as any card, but it's pretty close. You can get any Pokemon, presumably, off of any trainer. And then you can get basic energies, and you can potentially get special energies using Colossus Tenacity, but it is a supporter card. But it's really strong. Getting any trainer, or getting any 2 trainers is like really explosive and really powerful. And this card, again, can search so many different things and can set up so many powerful combos. I still think Terra Box is a really strong deck in the game. Not absolutely insane, but I do think it is a top 10 deck, despite not being played at the level of a top 10 deck right now, I don't think. Where is it played? Yeah, it's much lower than that. But because of its engine, ultimately, your attacking Pokemon are kind of weird in that deck. And you don't have any true super powerful Pokemon. We can look at something like Raging Bull, Ogerpon, which is kind of like the opposite side of that, where you have some super powerful Pokemon, and you have this to kind of round things out as well. You have Tiamat Ogerpon EX as well, which is a bit of like a medium to kind of bad, honestly. It's actually pretty bad as draw engine, but Noctowl, will help give those big explosive turns, kind of like what I talked about with Gold Tango, except Noctowl, it just gets you exactly what you want. It's any 2 cards from your deck as opposed to just 3 random cards, which Dudunsparce gets you. Again, Team Rocket's Watchtower is really bad for this. So yeah, I mean, it's bad for all of these colorless Pokemon. However, as I said, I don't see it too much. Honestly, Noctowl's an engine that I really like. I played with the Inteleon engine a bunch quite a while ago by now, and that was pretty cool. And notably, you did have Scoop Up Net, and you don't really have anything like that in Standard right now. You do have Aerosio Undernaps, which when it gets bumped, it shrinks your bench, and then you discard the Noctowls, and you can recover them and like expand your bench and stuff. And you can also Terra Scenario them or Scoop Cyclone them or something. But ultimately, that's not really something you're really factoring into the engine that much. It just doesn't matter that much. I will say its attack's pretty bad as well. I mean, it's not horrendous. None of them are great. I kind of want to talk about these and their attacks. Honestly, I kind of think of them against like walls, like Mimikyu or something, and how good they are there. But you could use it. I guess it's not great, but ultimately, this is my favorite engine in Standard, and definitely one that is pretty cool, but kind of weird as well because it's not an on-board draw engine. Notably, though, Pheasantipede EX is really important for this because it is kind of like a big part of your engine in those decks. Noctowl generally played with Pheasantipede, a lot of these are, and then also pretty often something like where is it? It's played with Squawkabilly as well. Not all the time. I mean, Squawkabilly doesn't actually have perfect synergy with it, but Squawkabilly is played. It's not actually played all the time in these decks, but it is played some. Yeah, here we go. Squawkabilly is nice to get you set up. Oh, and Fan Rotom. I didn't mention Fan Rotom. Fan Rotom is actually more important than Squawkabilly for the Noctowl engine. So that will get you set up. You're vulnerable some to hand disruption and stuff like that. But when it's working, it's absurdly strong getting anything. But tell me down below what you think of the engines in the game. But that's like an overview of them and breaking them down and what they're good at and not good at. I hope you enjoyed. Consider liking, subscribing, hitting the bell, all the good stuff. And as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.